Good morning and welcome back to our Mental Health Monday series. Today we are going to be talking about grief. So grief is the process of accepting and moving through the appropriate emotions that come with loss. So grief can be loss of someone physically to death. Grief can be over loss of a job. Grief can be over loss of an opportunity. Grief is a wide continuum that all really focuses on loss and change. So when it comes to grief, there are 5 different stages. We have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So what are these different phases and what do they look like? So with denial, what we often see is the person really flowing through the struggle of really coming to terms with what has happened. So just that disbelief of, nope, I can't accept that this thing has happened. I'm not ready to just, say, okay, yep, this thing is gone. This thing has changed. It's no longer. So denial is really, again, about being encompassed in that real difficult step of reaching acceptance. It's just being really, really encompassed and I can't move past saying, yes, this has happened. So that's denial. Anger is when we start to see some of the more aggressive frustration come out. And again, it's very, very normal and appropriate when you're grieving to feel anger. And it's just all those emotions coming out, why and just being so overwhelmed in that moment and letting it come out in aggressive ways sometimes. So again, anger is a stage of grief where we just kind of see all of that come to a head. Bargaining, we often see happen a lot across a continuum in relation to religion. So an example of this would be losing a loved one, and then all of a sudden you're trying to bargain with a deity. So for example, saying like, God, if you bring back this person, I will bargain with you. And in return, I will never curse again for the rest of my life. So that's another phase that people go through when they're grieving, is just trying to make these deals that will bring back the lost person, the lost opportunity, whatever it is that the person's grieving. We often go through a stage where, again, we go through trying to make deals because we so badly want that thing to come back. Another stage of grief is depression. So that's when the sadness really, really starts to set in and you have to navigate those emotions, just feeling low. It's a certain element of acceptance that's weaved into it because you're really processing the fact that this grief is in response to a loss. And so the depression stage, again, really focuses on that sadness. And then another stage, and it's usually the final stage with denial, anger, bargaining, and depression. They can happen in any order, but typically this last stage, which is acceptance, is the final stage of grief. So that's where you've ridden the emotional roller coaster and now you're at a point where it stopped and you're able to say, okay, this person's gone, this opportunity's gone, this change has happened, and I now fully accept it. I have felt through all the emotions, and I'm now in an even keel, healthy place where I identify that this thing is no longer. So what can we do when it comes to grief? How can we manage through something that's so complex and deals with so many different emotions? Well, it really depends on your age. So when it comes to kids, I would say 12 and under, there are 2 really good books that I recommend for grief processing. The first book is called When Someone Dies by Andrea Dorn. And it's just a really beautiful short story that kind of goes over the elements of loss. And it's a really wonderfully written book that I highly recommend. The second book is called The Memory Book, and it's a grief journal that parents can do with their kids. So a lot of the times I recommend this journal if the child suffers loss of a pet, loss of a grandparent, loss of a classmate, loss of a parent. It's a really, really wonderful book to go through when there is a loss and you're dealing with a child. As far as adults, the number 2 books that I recommend for adults who have gone through grief or or in the early stages of identifying that they may soon be going through a loss is, or are the books Finding Peace When Your Heart is in Pieces by Paul Coleman, and then The Long Grief Journey by Pam Blair. These are two really wonderful books that really take an all-encompassing look at loss and grief and really go into all the different emotions. They go through the different stages that I talked about, and they really just do a good job of kind of bringing it all together so that in adulthood, you can start to understand and come to terms with this emotion, because again, it is so complex. So I really appreciate everyone joining me today, and I will see you next Monday. Take care and have a good week.